Good evening. It's being described as disturbing verbiage. A Methuen High School student appeared in court today and was charged with making a terrorist threat after he posted on his Facebook page that he would outdo the marathon bombers. More on that in a minute. Other news, we are following more legal woes for James Whitey Bulger. The new trial judge ruled Bulger cannot claim that federal officials gave him immunity from prosecution. And Rhode Island today became the 9th state to allow same-sex marriage. Governor Lincoln Chafee signed the bill this afternoon. Now to our top story. It doesn't matter if he was serious or not. 18-year-old Cameron D'Ambrosio posted something on Facebook that landed him in jail. This is a rap video recently posted by 18-year-old Cameron D'Ambrosio. The lyrics are hard to hear and his message difficult to follow, but it is laced with profanity and talks about killing.
I don't care what the hell just happened, because you know that I'm always rapping.
Yesterday, officials say D'Ambrosio did not show up at Methuen High, where he is enrolled. But a schoolmate noticed he was on Facebook and notified school officials that the posts were disturbing. While authorities won't say exactly what D'Ambrosio posted, they said he threatened to outdo the marathon bombing and mentioned the White House and President Obama. Well, this episode, along with the 3 young men accused of helping Jahar Zanayanev after the marathon bombings rather than call police, has people wondering about the state of mind of teenagers, especially boys. And here with me is forensic psychologist Robert Mendoza and sociologist Hilary Levey Friedman. Welcome to all of you. So, I mean, again, we don't know the circumstances of this, but this is something you got to take seriously. But I mean, get in the mind of an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old, all of these kids, the ones from UMass Dartmouth and this kid, I mean, helping your friends first, I mean, using that kind of language and a Facebook posting, you know, in such a volatile time. What are they thinking? They're just not.
Well, I think that's the issue. What are they thinking? And they're going to be figuring that out during the dangerousness hearing, the 58A hearing that's going to take place. And they're going to be looking at things like state of mind. But more importantly, they're going to drill down a little bit deeper. What they're going to do is they're going to say, fine, you made these comments. Are they in a vacuum? I.e., did you do any planning? Did you access any websites about getting hold of weapons? Did you get any accomplices involved? Because there actually is a high incidence of people getting other people involved in these kinds of things. Were they feeling bullied? Ostracized? Those are 2 particularly big factors. They'll begin to look at all those things in current state of mind and then make a determination whether or not there's clear and convincing evidence whether they should be released. So one thing is to look at what we see on the social media, which is just undigested thinking. And there's more access to that. And I don't know whether or not kids are doing more or less than that, but we see more of it because of the social media component.
Yeah, well, he's got this whole, you know, YouTube thing going. There's a series of raps. That was one, but there are others. And then there's a skateboarding video when he was considerably younger. But he's been in trouble before, Hillary. He was charged with threatening to stab his little sister to death. So that charge, I think, was just dropped a month ago.
Yeah, just a month ago, but that is certainly a major red flag. In a study of school violence done by a group of sociologists at Harvard, they found that family problems and previous threats of violence like this is a definite red flag and something that we want to look out for. But I also want to go back to thinking about what's in the mind of these young kids and think about the classmate of this young man, Cameron, who reported the Facebook posting to the principal. And that's an interesting shift. And I don't know if it's just because we're in Boston and coming off of the wake of the bombings, but that's very interesting to think about as well. What was this young man thinking? And have those, you know,
could have been a girl. We don't know.
It could have been. You're right. You're right. That's
likely.
right. That's right. And we don't know how many friends Cameron had on Facebook, but that's certainly a change, you know, since 9/11 that we say if you see something suspicious, report it.
Sort of the opposite of what the kids in the Zanayanev case did, you know, by protecting and sheltering him or thinking they were going to do that. This girl actually, or we don't know, girl or boy, actually came forward and said something.
Well, that's actually one of the tenets of the FBI and Secret Service have put together safe school programs, and they have a number of things they say need to be done in schools, and that's actually specifically one of those things that needs to be done. This idea of differentiating between snitching and helping somebody get assistance. There's a lot of culture amongst young people to sort of not snitch, not tell parents, not tell parental figures, authority figures of what's going on. Actually, you know, to differentiate between who might be snitching and just telling on somebody and who might be trying to help them get help. teaching young people the difference between that, I think, is really critical.
I know you're not a lawyer, but why isn't this a federal case? I mean, he's charged with terrorism.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface. I'm sure there are some features of it that might involve who was involved initially, who was investigating the crime. This particular charge actually is one you don't hear a lot of. I think you may hear a lot more about it in the future, given sort of the place where we are these days. But they'll certainly look at those things. And the three areas they're going to look for, as you alluded to, they're going to look at historical factors, prior acts of violence, who was the target, the intensity of those kinds of things, whether there's been any history of mental illness in the past. Then they'll look at current clinical status, impulsivity. They'll look at whether or not the person is involved in mental health treatment. And then if those things exist on any level, any of those aforementioned factors exist, what are the risk management factors? You can't lock everybody up that has those factors. So in the community, do they have somebody they're working with? Have they responded well to treatment in the past? Are the parents involved? We haven't heard a lot about the parents here. So there are a lot of balls in the air in this particular thing. And to be honest, a dangerousness hearing at the state level will be good. They'll have some professionals involved that'll really drill down and take a look at this and make a good determination. But here's the thing that's really frightening. At the end of the day, no matter how close we come with this, there's no profile that we can identify that's going to say this is or is not a school shooter. We can only do the best we can, but we're still going to have incidents like this.
I'm still fascinated, Hilary, with the kids from yesterday, because I mean, their lawyers are claiming that they didn't think that Johar was one of the bombing suspects, but clearly they went in there, they took the stuff, so they must have realized so. But their first instinct was to get rid of the stuff, not to call the police and say, hey, I think we have a problem.
And not just that, to go back to the social media connection, one of the young men, one of the Kazakh students who's being accused of this, he actually went on his Facebook page, changed his profile picture, and changed Johar's as well. And so we see, not just taking out the physical evidence, but also, again, the social media presence is very powerful.
Why change Johar's picture?
Unclear, but apparently he changed it to a black and white picture and deleted and changed some things in the Facebook timeline, and investigators are very interested in that. But more broadly, again, with this case with Cameron, the 18-year-old, we see social media just changing the whole landscape of how children communicate. And while we don't have a profile of school shooters, we do know from this study that's out in a book called Rampage by Catherine Newman and others, that 78% of the boys, and they were all male, who did these school shootings had written about violence. Well, now we not only have Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, to look at as well the writings that people can do. So actually, it is good that we see this as a red flag and want to investigate it further.
Yeah, I mean, the FBI and Secret Service went away from the term profiling a number of years ago, and they use the term now threat assessment, with the implication that you have to do an ongoing analysis, because there's this recognition that 78%, so you have 78 out of 100 on a good day, by the way, statistically, that you get that. That means you're missing 22 out of 100 that may be that person. So you may miss it completely if they're not part of the pool you've identified as a profiled suspect. So really the key is early intervention. Rarely do these shooters that we've studied in school shooting just snap. Those are usually crimes of, they get mad at somebody and hit somebody, or they broke up with their girlfriend or had an argument at the dance. Those aren't these people. They take years to actually develop. So that's a good thing, because that means if you somehow provide the services in the school system earlier on and really truly make a policy effort to say we're going to fund these things, you can actually, schools that have implemented these programs have had a 50% decrease in their programs when they put into place these things.
And additionally, we know that young people's brains are continuing to evolve. We'd like to think that our own brains are still continuing to evolve. But in particular, we know that the impulse control part of the brain continues to develop through the 20s. And so we want to remember that as well.
Okay, but why is it always the boys? I mean, I don't want to say, but pretty much 99.9% of the time, it's the boys who have these issues. So, and I really do understand the developing brain and all that. I'm not dismissing that. But it seems like there's, sort of a more rational or a saner kind of cutoff
in girls.
Well, also the sociologist in me knows that we have a variety of cultural scripts. And one of those that's been identified that's particularly an issue for a lot of these boys is the idea of being very masculine in traditional ideas of being muscular and all these sorts of things. And if you look at many of the school shooters, they don't fit that profile. And there's been bullying and a degree of ostracization. And so we want to think about that as well for boys. Well, how are we raising our boys? What are they telling them? What are we telling them that they have to be like? And how can we reach them earlier? So just for instance, in some of my work on kids after school activities, chess is a great way to get kids when they're young. They can still learn about how to be aggressive, but how to make a plan, how to be strategic, and they can find other kids who are like them who aren't just wanting to, you know, be violent on the football field, for example.
The other thing, you're right, is that women and young women and young men act out differently. While they may have depression and may feel bullying, we saw that in Western Mass with the case of the young woman that was bullied and suicided. Women tend to take it out more on themselves. Men, young men try to find a way that as you're suggesting, socialization of a way to display that kind of bravado. So it's not necessarily that I think the incidence is lower. I think that the behavior that they engage in as a result of it is different.
All right. Robert Mendoza, Hilary Friedman, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, and all next week on WGBH News, our Right of Way series, cars, bikes, and pedestrians. It seems everyone has a beef.
I wish